Welcome back to a new week and a fresh piece of furniture to revitalize, refinish, and bring back to life. I am so excited that I found this piece and picked it up. I am really eager to get started working on it. It's absolutely beautiful. The ornate details, the handles, everything about this piece is just filled with that antique charm and character. I knew that it was a special piece of furniture. With that being said, it has a lot of damage and it's going to take a lot of work to repair and refinish this piece. Unfortunately, there are a couple of missing trim pieces on two of the drawers. I have one of them, but I cannot find the second one. I was hoping it would be hidden in the cavity of the dresser. Sometimes that happens. I do have a collection of broken pieces that came off this piece that I did get from the seller. So I will assess where those go and repair and glue them back on. One of the other issues that I'm facing is a missing handle. The hardware on this piece is really beautiful. It's age appropriate, it's antique, it's ornate, and it crushes my soul that there is a broken handle. I did a cursory search online and I'm not sure if I'll be able to find the exact match. All in all, I'm so excited to bring this piece back to life. It's really something special, beautiful, and deserves to be treasured and honored. Come along with me this week as I breathe some life into this tired chest of drawers. The first step is going to be taking all the drawers out and really taking a good inventory of what I have here and what repairs need to be made. All the drawers were lined with this faux marble paper, so I'll have to see what condition the drawer bottoms are in underneath all of this contact paper. This drawer cavity is missing this piece. I have it. It just came unattached. So that will be one thing that I'll have to do is reattach this drawer glide that the drawer actually runs on top of. So two of the drawers did have missing trim pieces. I found one of them in the actual body of the dresser itself, so I have at least one. However, I do need to recreate a second one. This entire piece is made up of solid walnut, which is absolutely beautiful. And luckily my local woodworking store does have a bin of offcuts, including walnut. So I dug through it and was lucky enough to score this for 88 cents, which is great. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it down to the rough size, and then next I'm gonna have to try to match this profile. Now, it would be easiest to use a router and a router table to do this. However, I have a handheld router, I don't have a table, And a piece this small would be too dangerous to try to use a handheld router on without having some sort of like supports and stuff. So I think I'm going to use a combination of my table saw and my oscillating tool and sanding to try to get it to be this shape as close as possible. One of the last things that I'd like to do today in order to allow the glue to set up overnight is to address the bottom of this drawer. You can see it is dipping down significantly, and it's also been repaired once before. This is the underside, and this is one of the edges that the drawer actually runs on when it slides in and out of the dresser. And just over time, it's worn down and there's a significant dip in the middle. I do have a small filler board that I can put and replace this previous patch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set my table saw to be the thickness of the actual original drawer material, and I will cut away the majority of this old patch board right here and glue a new board down, and then once that glue is cured, go ahead and cut it flush again so that it's all the same level and there is no dip. With the first round of repairs complete on this piece, I am going to prep everything for the stripping and sanding process. Whenever I strip a piece, I always like to put a little bit of tape on the back side of the hardware holes so that that stripper does not drip down into the actual drawer box itself. And once that's complete, I can grab my chemical stripper and start applying a very liberal amount to all of the surfaces, starting with the drawer boxes. I just find this easiest. Typically, this product works great for me and does its job within about 15 to 30 minutes. I will start scraping to see how much of that old finish has let go, and if it seems like enough has let go without the product drying out, I will start to scrape and remove it. I find that Afterwash or acetone is a wonderful cleaning product for after I'm done stripping. This stripper is really thick. It's really gloopy, and especially when it's had a chance to sit and dry and collect a lot of the old finish, it can be hard to remove. So using a very fine steel wool with that Afterwash or acetone if I'm out of it, I can really clean it up and get a lot of that residue away. And when I'm all done, I finish up with a paper towel soaked in that Afterwash product. When it comes to getting all that finish off of those heavily detailed areas, the more time and care I take on this step with the chemical stripper, just really getting it on, letting it do its job, and wiping it back multiple times with that steel wool, with a paper towel. I will use a soft bristled metal brush just to get in those hard to reach areas. I find that this will save me so much time in the sanding process later. I did choose to strip and refinish the inside of these door boxes for a number of reasons. Firstly, they were all solid wood, and so I knew that they could handle a good sanding. Secondly, they were scuffed, scratched up, and they would just look so much better with a fresh coat of wax at the end of the day. I tested out a couple of different strippers to figure out what kind of product was used to seal these and did discover it was lacquer. So a lacquer thinner used generously with a steel wool and then wiped back with a towel afterwards got rid of the majority of that thick first coat of it. That way, when I go in to sand it later on, it's so much easier to sand and I'm not having to struggle through it quite so much. I start off with my orbital sander going over the entire door box, sides, inside, front, back, all of it. And then I will take my detail sander with nice square edges afterwards to get in those hard to reach areas, those corners, those crevices, anywhere that needs a little bit more attention. Every single time I strip down a piece like this, I expect to still have to do a lot of sanding. This is a really time-consuming process all together. Once you add everything up, the stripping, the sanding, the repairs, all of it takes a lot of time at the end of the day. But each one of these steps is vital to the beautiful end product. And once I get to see my final finished piece, it's absolutely worth it, all that time and effort. When it comes to the old original hardware, I did want to clean up all the ones that I still had left that were whole and good. I used a mix of 50% water, 50% vinegar, boiled them on the stove for probably about 20 minutes or so. and then took a fine grit steel wool and barkeeper's friend to really polish them and get all that old dirt and grime off. Drying them off very well with a microfiber towel, I was then ready to re-lacquer these so that they're protected for decades more to come. And now, as far as the missing hardware, I did opt to fill the top 2 drawer holes with wooden dowels. They aren't going to be a perfect match when they stain, but they will at least take the stain, and I can address that afterwards with some color correcting by hand after that staining process is all complete. I've now got this piece, I'd say like 95% stripped down, sanded down back to the raw wood. There's a little bit of fine detail sanding that I have left to do. However, once I started stripping away the old finish that was on the top of this piece, I quickly discovered that the species of wood that the top was made of, while it's still solid, it's not the same species of wood that the rest of the solid body of this little chest of drawers was made from. Based off of this, and where I can see there are visible screw holes that got patched and filled in, my best guess is that actually this piece had a completely different top at one point. I can tell by working on this piece that it has been repaired and refinished once before at the very least. There are some newer components both inside the dresser and on the bottom of the drawers. And my best guess at that time, perhaps the original top was cracked, warped, damaged, just needed to be replaced, and whoever repaired it and refinished it previously replaced the top with this different top. The top that's on it now, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a nice old species of probably pine, it looks like. However, if I do choose to stain this piece, it's going to stain completely differently than the rest of the dresser. So I did opt to order in some fresh walnut veneer that I will go ahead and apply to the top. Since this is solid wood, all I'll have to do is seal it up and apply that new veneer, and it's still a solid top. It just has a more decorative veneer over the top, just like most dressers of this age and a little bit newer are. And since I already have this solid wood top that's very sturdy, attached perfectly, isn't warped, isn't cracked, anything like that, I will just apply the veneer over the top of this pine. But this is just one of the aspects of furniture refinishing. You have to pivot and see what can be achieved and what is the most realistic to make this piece desirable and beautiful again. I am by no means an expert when it comes to applying this peel and stick veneer over a large surface like the top of a dresser. I have had some success and some failure when it comes to applying this stuff. The best that I can say is to apply a lot of pressure. It's kind of a one stick thing, so make sure you line all your lines up very well and apply even pressure with a solid board with a rounded over edge, just to try to avoid any sort of air bubbles in the product itself. I do think that you can use a hot iron after the fact if you do get a couple of air bubbles, but that might not be a guaranteed solution. Luckily, I was pretty successful when installing this piece, rubbing it down as much as possible and scoring those edges gave it a nice clean line at the end of the day, and I can go ahead and take a sanding block on the edge to knock down the rest of it to make it nice and smooth and flawless looking. I opted for a nice warm stain in the color Early American. I grabbed a Minwax fast drying extra thick formula that provided a lot of coverage and a lot of color. Applying it with a foam brush and wiping it back immediately with a shop towel, I was really impressed with the way this came out, the way this applied. It was nice, rich color, and it went on beautifully. If anything, it was a bit warmer than I expected, but all in all, in the end, I don't think I would have changed anything about this color. It really highlighted that burl wood, made it pop, and showed how rich this beautiful wood grain and walnut pattern can be. When it came time to seal this piece, I did opt to pick up a lacquer. This was what was used originally, and it is a time appropriate, very durable, and pretty easy to apply product. I grabbed a satin sheen out of a spray can and applied it in light but even coats. The great thing about lacquer is it melts into itself with the subsequent coats, so it's a pretty user-friendly product at the end. The only thing that I would highly recommend is wearing the proper protection. This is some serious smelling stuff, so make sure you have an appropriate respirator and you are in a well-ventilated area. Absolutely do not try to do this indoors. It does not require sanding in between coats, but I did want to give at least the top a nice smooth sand just in case any little dust particles might have landed in that first coat. I did a total of 3 coats altogether to build a nice durable coverage. After that second coat of lacquer dried and before I applied the third and final coat, I did want to address the color correcting areas that I knew I would have to do to those 2 top drawers that I did fill in the hardware holes of. One of those drawers did have an area of the actual burlwood veneer that had been sanded through from that previous restoration job that somebody did years and years ago. I wasn't sure how this was going to stain up, but I was able to luckily camouflage it pretty well. Color correcting with these specialty furniture paints by hand does absolutely take practice, time. I do find that I get better with it with practice, just like anything else. So if you pick this up and try to do this technique and are getting frustrated that it's not turning out exactly the way you wanted the first time, one of my biggest pieces of advice is to layer lots of different colors of warm tones, cool tones, light browns, dark browns, mimic the graining pattern, and just really try to create a soft yet organic looking product at the end. I have to say I was pretty happy with the result of this. I was able to mimic that burl wood pretty effectively, and in my opinion, those hardware holes really did disappear at the end, which was all that I was asking for. By flipping this little chest on its back and taking a look at the underside, I was able to see that the original design did have caster wheels, but they had fallen out. I did not have them at the time of acquiring this. So I did actually order and pick up some more modern options. I have to admit, these were quite a bit bigger than what I initially thought they were going to be when they did come in, but at the end, I really did like the way they looked. They added a lot more height to this piece, which in my opinion it was needing. People tend to be looking for taller pieces in their modern homes. So being able to add just a couple more inches to the bottom of this in a pretty removable way at the end of the day, I think was a wonderful solution. When comparing my freshly cleaned and lacquered original hardware with the newer hardware that I was looking to use on the other top drawers, I knew that I needed to do some color correcting. I had this Rub and Buff gilding wax in a color that actually matched really, really well with the original hardware. So I just used this color, buffed it into the newer hardware, including that keyhole cover. That way everything matched a lot better. The tones were much more similar and they did not stick out quite so much, looking like something completely different and new at the end of the day. With all the drawers lined and a generous amount of Howard's Feed and Wax buffed into the sides of this piece, the drawers are ready to slide home and it's complete. Let's remind ourselves what this piece looked like when I first got it. I knew it was something special when I saw it in the listing and was so excited to go grab it, pick it up, and see if I could bring this piece back to life. It did have some serious issues. The finish was completely marred. It was chipping, flaking in some areas. The top had a lot of scratches, a lot of dents, dings. It was a completely different species of wood. The drawers were not sliding very well. One of those handles was missing, not to mention the missing trim piece that I did have to recreate in the end. All in all, this was a project. But it was so worth it in the end. Look at how this burl wood absolutely pops. That fresh stain and fresh finish lets it shine through and be the absolute beautiful statement that it was always meant to be. That polished up, shined up hardware is like jewelry on a piece of furniture like this. It shines, it's contrast, and it just looks so glorious, expensive, just elegant. This piece really does have my heart. I don't think that I've fallen in love with a piece quite so easily as I did with this one. I hope you guys agree. Let me know what you think. In my opinion, it was absolutely worth it at the end of the day. If you liked this video, please feel free to subscribe, like, and comment what you think down below. Thank you so much for watching.